The execution arena of House Valrose was built for monsters, not mercy. That was why the entire royal court fell silent when the human refused to kill the creature kneeling before him. Because in the empire of the Karzai Dominion, compassion was considered weakness. Hesitation was considered disease, and mercy was something rulers erased from their bloodlines centuries ago. Princess Liriana watched from the obsidian balcony above the arena floor, silver armor glowing beneath crimson firelights, while thousands of nobles leaned forward in anticipation, waiting for blood, waiting for violence, waiting for the human gladiator to become exactly what the Empire wanted him to be. Another weapon shaped through suffering. Instead, the human dropped his blade. The metallic clang echoed through the arena like a gunshot. Gasps rippled across the audience. The chained creature below him looked barely alive, six-limbed, scarred, trembling beneath electric restraints while blood dripped across the black sand. The beast had already killed 3 warriors during previous trials. According to Imperial broadcasts, it was a savage abomination captured beyond the frontier worlds, something dangerous enough to deserve extermination. But the human had seen its eyes, terrified, not monstrous, terrified. "You are ordered to finish it," the arena commander barked from the sidelines. The human ignored him. Instead, he crouched slowly beside the wounded creature, while thousands stared in disbelief. "It's scared," he said calmly. Princess Liriana felt irritation rise immediately. Scared. The word sounded absurd inside the execution arena. That thing had ripped soldiers apart. The crowd wanted spectacle. And the human was kneeling beside it like some exhausted medic on a battlefield. "Kill it!" one noble shouted. "Finish the beast!" another screamed. The chant spread quickly. Violence was entertainment inside the Dominion. Mercy interrupted the rhythm. The humans slowly looked up toward the balcony where Princess Liriana stood watching. Their eyes met across the arena. "You knew this wasn't a monster," he said loudly. The entire court froze. Nobody accused royalty publicly, especially not a slave fighter from Earth. Princess Liriana narrowed her pale, golden eyes. "And what exactly do you believe it is?" she asked coldly. The human glanced back toward the wounded creature. "A prisoner," he answered. Silence hit the arena harder than any explosion. Because deep down, everyone knew he was right. The Karzai Dominion conquered worlds through fear. They displayed executions publicly, transformed captured enemies into gladiators. BROADCAST, suffering across entire systems as psychological warfare. Brutality maintained order better than diplomacy ever could. At least that was what the royal bloodlines believed. Princess Liriana believed it too, or at least she used to. The human standing in the arena was named Commander Ethan Vale before the Dominion captured him during the siege of Arcturus 9. Humanity had fought harder than expected during First Contact wars. Not because Earth possessed superior technology. The Dominion outclassed humanity militarily in almost every measurable category. But humans fought in ways alien strategists struggled to predict. They sacrificed themselves for civilians. They rescued enemies during ceasefires. They refused surrender even after catastrophic losses. Most disturbing of all, humans protected weakness instead of exploiting it. The Dominion considered that behavior irrational. Princess Liriana considered it fascinating. That fascination was exactly why Ethan still lived. After his capture, many nobles demanded immediate execution. Human officers possessed valuable propaganda potential. But Liriana requested custody personally. Officially, she claimed the human commander would make an excellent arena fighter capable of boosting public morale. Unofficially, she wanted to understand him. The problem was that Ethan Vale consistently refused to behave like a broken prisoner. Even after months inside the Dominion, he still looked at people directly when speaking. Still argued with guards, still protected weaker captives during ration distribution, still carried himself like someone who believed morality mattered, which honestly irritated Princess Liriana more than outright rebellion would have. She understood hatred. Hatred made sense, mercy did not, especially not here. The arena commander stepped forward aggressively. "You dishonor the trial," he snarled at Ethan. "No," Ethan replied calmly. "You dishonor yourselves enough already." Several guards immediately raised plasma rifles. The crowd erupted into furious shouting. Princess Liriana slowly raised one hand. Silence returned instantly. The princess descended from the balcony with cold elegance while ceremonial guards surrounded her. Black cape flowing behind polished armor, the arena floor itself seemed to tense as she approached the human. "You were given one command," Liriana said quietly. "And I made a better choice," Ethan answered. "You think mercy makes you noble?" "No," he replied. "I think cruelty makes you lazy." That answer genuinely surprised her. Most prisoners either begged or threatened. Humans argued philosophy during executions, apparently. The wounded creature beside Ethan whimpered softly. Liriana glanced toward it. "Do you know what that thing did on Keller Station?" she asked. "No," Ethan answered honestly. "It slaughtered 27 soldiers. After you captured it, the princess remained silent." Ethan nodded slowly. Thought so. The realization irritated her more than expected. Because again, he was probably right. "Take the creature to containment," Liriana ordered suddenly. The arena commander looked shocked. "Princess, that was not a request." Guards hesitated before carefully approaching the wounded prisoner. The crowd immediately exploded into outrage. "They deserve death. Mercy weakens the throne. Kill them both." Liriana ignored all of it. Instead, she stared directly at Ethan. "You interest me, human." Most people who say that are usually planning something terrible. A faint smile nearly touched her lips before vanishing. Perhaps she turned sharply toward the guards. "Bring him to the royal wing." The silence afterward felt almost supernatural. Nobody brought arena slaves into the royal wing. Especially not defiant human officers. Ethan himself looked mildly concerned. "Yeah," he muttered while guards escorted him away. "This definitely feels ominous." Princess Liriana spent most of her life surrounded by monsters pretending to be civilized. The Karzai Dominion rewarded ruthlessness from birth. Royal children learned military doctrine before language theory. Emotional softness resulted in public humiliation. Compassion was surgically removed from leadership culture generation after generation, until cruelty became indistinguishable from strength. Liriana adapted perfectly. She executed rivals without hesitation, led orbital bombardments personally, negotiated political alliances through intimidation. The Empire adored her, feared her, praised her as the future Empress of Dominion expansion. Yet despite everything she achieved, there remained one persistent problem. She no longer felt anything while doing it. Victory became mechanical. Violence became routine. Even fear bored her eventually. Then humanity arrived. Humans complicated things. Especially Ethan Vale. The royal chamber assigned to him overlooked the capital city of Velcris Prime. Endless towers glowing red beneath storm-filled skies, while military cruisers drifted overhead like predators. Ethan stood beside the window wearing restraint cuffs and an exhausted expression. "This is either a prison cell with fancy lighting," he muttered, "or the weirdest hostage situation in history." "You speak constantly," Liriana observed from the doorway. Human survival mechanism. She entered slowly, while guards remained outside. "Most prisoners fear silence." "Most prisoners probably haven't spent months around your empire," Ethan answered. "Silence here feels healthier than conversations." Again, that strange directness. No fear, no performance. Just honesty sharp enough to cut steel. Liriana approached carefully. "Why did you spare the creature?" Ethan leaned against the window. "Because it wasn't trying to kill me. It killed soldiers. It killed captors. There is no difference. There's a massive difference." The princess folded her arms. "You assume morality is universal." "No," Ethan replied. "I assume suffering is—" That answer lingered strangely in the room. "You humans always speak this way. Only the annoying ones." "You appear exceptionally annoying, thank you." To her own surprise, Liriana almost laughed. The sensation unsettled her immediately. Royal heirs were not supposed to enjoy prisoner conversations, especially human prisoners. "You believe mercy creates strength," she said carefully. "I believe mercy proves strength already exists, and if compassion gets you killed—" Ethan shrugged. "Then at least you die human." Something about the sentence hit harder than expected. Because deep beneath layers of imperial conditioning, Liriana suddenly wondered whether she herself still qualified as one. Over the following weeks, the princess continued summoning Ethan privately under increasingly questionable excuses. Interrogation sessions turned into arguments, arguments turned into conversations. Conversations slowly became the only moments Liriana genuinely anticipated each day. Ethan criticized everything openly. The arena system, the military hierarchy, the Dominion's obsession with fear. Once during dinner, he casually informed the future ruler of the empire that her aesthetic civilization behaved like emotionally unstable warlords with expensive architecture. The servants nearly collapsed from shock. Liriana simply stared at him across the table. You insult death very casually. Occupational habit, you truly fear nothing. Ethan looked down quietly for a moment. No, he said softly. Humans fear lots of things, such as becoming monsters ourselves. That answer followed her long after the conversation ended, because the Dominion never feared becoming monsters. They feared becoming weak. Maybe there was a difference. Or maybe humans were simply insane. The rescued creature from the arena survived containment injuries surprisingly well. Imperial scientists classified the species as Vayar, an advanced frontier civilization previously believed extinct after Dominion expansion campaigns. According to military records, the Vayari resisted occupation violently before disappearing into deep space refugee routes. The creature Ethan spared was not an animal. It was a soldier, tortured, conditioned. Displayed publicly as entertainment, Liriana reviewed the files alone inside her private chambers while stormlight flickered across dark walls. The reports disturbed her more than they should have, not because the treatment was unusual. Because it was normal, that realization lingered like poison. When Ethan arrived later under guard, she immediately confronted him. You knew what the creature was. I guessed how pain recognizes pain. The simplicity of the answer irritated her again. Humans reduced complex moral systems into sentences that somehow sounded obvious afterward. You looked at one prisoner and immediately assumed injustice. Because your empire enjoys suffering too much, Ethan replied calmly. Healthy civilizations don't turn executions into festivals. Liriana's eyes narrowed. You judge us easily for a species currently fighting planetary wars among yourselves. Yeah, Ethan admitted. Humans can be brutal too. Then what makes you different? Ethan looked directly at her. We hate ourselves for it. That sentence silenced the room. The Dominion celebrated brutality. Humans mourned it. Maybe that was the difference. One evening, Liriana escorted Ethan through the upper palace balconies, overlooking the capital, officially to discuss military intelligence regarding human resistance movements, unofficially because she found his perspective strangely addictive. The city below glowed crimson beneath endless rain, while massive warships crossed the clouds overhead. You know what your empire reminds me of? Ethan said quietly. This should be interesting. A scared animal trying to look bigger than it really is. Several nearby guards visibly tensed. Liriana dismissed them with one gesture. You believe we rule through fear because we are afraid ourselves? I think your leaders forgot how to inspire people without terror. And humans inspire through kindness, sometimes Ethan answered. Sometimes through stubborn stupidity. Another almost smile touched her expression. It happened more often lately, dangerously often. You still think I wanted a monster? Liriana said after a moment. You did, why? Because monsters are predictable. She stopped walking. Ethan continued calmly. If everyone around you is cruel, then cruelty feels safe. If everyone fears weakness, mercy becomes terrifying. The princess stared at him silently, because once again, he understood too much. The truth was that Liriana had specifically requested human prisoners for the arena because she expected hatred. Humans lost colonies during Dominion invasions. Entire fleets burned under Karzai bombardments. She assumed captured humans would become savage enough to justify imperial propaganda. She wanted monsters. Instead, she found Ethan protecting wounded enemies during gladiator matches, sharing food with weaker captives, refusing opportunities for revenge. It confused her deeply, because hatred would have been easier to understand. Then came the rebellion on Sector Moon Kepri. The uprising began suddenly during Trade Summit celebrations. Hidden resistance fighters detonated military stockpiles before seizing civilian transport hubs across the moon's capital city. Imperial casualties mounted rapidly. Communication towers collapsed. Local commanders demanded immediate orbital suppression, meaning bombard the entire city. Millions would die. Princess Liriana arrived aboard the dreadnought Harbinger within hours. Standing inside the command bridge while officers displayed casualty projections across holographic screens, "Civilian losses acceptable," one admiral declared coldly. "Rebellion must end before spreading." Ethan stood nearby in restraint cuffs, beside security personnel. Liriana brought him specifically because she wanted human strategic analysis, though she would never admit another reason. "You can't bomb the city," Ethan said immediately. The admiral scoffed. "Human sentimentality. That moon contains children. It also contains insurgents." Ethan turned toward Liriana. "You know this won't solve anything." The princess remained silent while tactical data flickered across the bridge. Destroying the city would restore order quickly. That was the Dominion way. Fear prevented future rebellion. Mercy invited weakness. At least that was what she spent her entire life learning. "Your Highness," the admiral pressed, "we await authorization." Then Ethan spoke again. "If you destroy everyone every time they resist," he said quietly, "eventually, you're not ruling civilizations anymore. You're ruling graveyards." Something inside Liriana shifted painfully. The bridge fell silent. Finally, the princess made her decision. No bombardment. Several officers stared in disbelief. Instead, Liriana ordered ground negotiations supported by limited tactical operations. Slower, riskier, politically dangerous. And according to Dominion tradition, weak. The rebellion ended 3 days later with civilian casualties dramatically reduced. Imperial media celebrated Liriana's strategic brilliance publicly. Privately, the Royal Council was furious. Because Mercy spread ideas faster than fear ever could, whispers began moving through the empire. The princess spared rebels. The princess protects prisoners. The princess listens to humans. For conservative aristocrats, the rumors sounded catastrophic. For ordinary citizens, they sounded hopeful. Lord Commander Varix despised all of it. A supreme military overseer of the Dominion, he considered emotional compromise existential weakness. Varix respected Liriana's intelligence, but increasingly feared her changing behavior. Especially regarding Ethan Vale, the human represented contamination. A dangerous ideological infection. Worse, Liriana actually trusted him. Varix decided the situation required correction. The opportunity arrived during a classified military inspection deep beneath the palace. Liriana escorted Ethan through restricted biological research sectors where Dominion scientists developed enhanced warfare organisms from conquered species. Massive containment chambers lined dark corridors while distorted screams echoed through reinforced walls. Ethan's expression hardened immediately. "What the hell is this place? Military Advancement Division?" Liriana answered carefully, "This is torture." Before she could respond, emergency alarms suddenly erupted across the facility. Red lights flooded the corridors. Containment breach, Sector 7. Scientists screamed through communication channels while armored doors sealed automatically. Then something massive slammed against reinforced glass hard enough to crack it. Ethan turned sharply toward the chamber. Inside stood a towering biological weapon nearly 4 meters tall. Armored bone plating covering distorted muscle while mechanical implants pulsed through its spine. But its eyes looked human. "What did you do to it?" Ethan whispered. The containment wall exploded. Chaos erupted instantly. The creature tore through security squads with horrifying strength while plasma fire illuminated smoke-filled corridors. Scientists fled screaming. Emergency systems failed sector by sector. Liriana drew her energy blade immediately while guards formed defensive positions. Then Ethan saw the identification markings burned into the creature's neck. Terran, human, oh God. The realization hit like physical impact. The Dominion had been experimenting on captured human soldiers, transforming prisoners into living weapons. The monstrous figure roared violently before charging directly toward the group. Guards opened fire. The creature ripped through them anyway. Liriana moved forward instinctively to engage. Ethan grabbed her arm hard. "Wait, release me. That thing is scared. It is murdering people because you tortured it." The creature slammed another guard into the wall with bone-shattering force, while alarms screamed overhead. Ethan stepped forward slowly. "Hey," he called toward the monster. Liriana stared at him like he lost his mind. The creature turned violently. Blood covered its claws. Mechanical implants sparked beneath damaged flesh. "You don't want this," Ethan said calmly. The guards looked horrified. Commander One whispered, "Get back." But Ethan continued approaching. "You remember who you are?" he said softly. "They tried to take it from you, but you remember." The creature trembled violently. For one terrible second, Liriana expected it to tear Ethan apart. Instead it stopped. Just stopped. Massive claws shaking, while distorted breathing echoed through the corridor. Then, slowly, painfully, the creature backed away. Every soldier in the hallway stared in stunned silence. Ethan lowered his voice further. "You don't have to become what they made." The monster collapsed to its knees and began crying, not roaring, not screaming, crying. The sound haunted Liriana long after the crisis ended, because suddenly every Dominion experiment looked different. Not weapons, victims. Varix arrived shortly afterward with elite security forces. Furious that the biological asset remained alive. "Eliminate it immediately," he ordered. "No," Ethan snapped. The commander ignored him. "It is unstable. It's traumatized." "There is no difference." Ethan stepped directly between the soldiers and the kneeling creature. "Then shoot me first." The entire corridor froze. Varix stared coldly at the human. "You would die for that abomination." Ethan's voice sharpened. "I would die to stop people like you from creating more of them." Liriana felt something inside her chest tighten painfully. Because in that moment, the human looked more courageous than every decorated war hero in the Empire combined. Not because he fought monsters, because he refused to become one. "Stand down," Liriana ordered quietly. Varix turned immediately, "Princess." That was an order. The commander's expression darkened. "You are allowing emotional contamination to compromise military security. Perhaps military security deserves compromise." Silence flooded the corridor. The statement itself bordered on heresy inside the Dominion. Varix realized it instantly, and for the first time. He truly feared the future Empress. The surviving human test subject was transferred into protected medical containment under Ethan's supervision. Against nearly every military recommendation, the prisoner's original name eventually surfaced through fragmented memory recovery. Lieutenant Mason Reed, captured during frontier conflicts nearly 2 years earlier. Officially listed dead by both sides. The experiments performed on him horrified even some Dominion scientists once exposed publicly. Neural mutilation, pain conditioning, forced augmentation, psychological fragmentation. The Empire called it progress. Ethan called it evil. Liriana increasingly agreed that terrified her. Because if Ethan was right about this, what else had the Dominion become? One night, she found Ethan asleep beside Mason's containment chamber after nearly 30 consecutive hours assisting recovery teams. The human commander looked exhausted, bruised, emotionally drained, yet he still stayed. Most beings would have walked away. Mason barely recognized himself anymore. His body permanently transformed, his mind shattered by torture. But Ethan refused to abandon him. "Why?" Liriana asked quietly after Ethan finally woke. "Why what? Why continue helping someone beyond saving?" Ethan stared at her carefully. "Nobody is beyond saving. That is objectively false." "No," he answered softly. "It's just easier to believe people are lost forever, because then nobody has to try." The princess leaned against the chamber wall silently. "You think my entire empire avoids trying? I think your empire built itself around the idea that fear is cheaper than compassion, and humans choose compassion constantly." Ethan laughed tiredly. "Hell no. Humans fail at it all the time, then why value it? Because trying matters. Again, those simple, impossible answers." Liriana spent years surrounded by strategists speaking in calculations and conquest projections. Then one damaged human arrived and reduced morality into sentences even children could understand. Trying matters. The problem was that once she started listening to him, she could no longer ignore herself. Reports from occupied systems looked uglier now. Execution broadcasts felt hollow. Military ceremonies resembled theater masking and security. The Dominion suddenly appeared less like an unstoppable empire and more like a civilization terrified of kindness. Variks noticed the transformation spreading. Citizens questioned public executions. Younger officers discussed humanitarian reforms. Even some soldiers admired Ethan's actions during the containment breach. The human had become dangerous, not militarily, ideologically. And dangerous ideas always required elimination. Variks moved carefully. If Ethan died publicly, the princess might react unpredictably. So instead, he targeted the easier option, Mason Reed. The transformed human represented living evidence of Dominion atrocities. If the prisoner disappeared, much of Ethan's influence would weaken. The assassination attempt happened during medical transfer procedures. Elite soldiers entered containment under false authorization, intending quiet termination. They never reached Mason because Ethan intercepted them first. The fight exploded through the medical sector with brutal speed. Ethan disarmed one soldier, shattered another against the wall, then seized a plasma rifle while alarms screamed across the station. By the time Liriana arrived, security teams surrounded the hallway in chaos. Mason stood behind Ethan, trembling violently, while soldiers aimed weapons at both humans. Variks himself emerged moments later. "Commander Vale has attacked Dominion personnel," he announced loudly. "He will surrender immediately." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Funny," he said. "From my perspective, I just stopped a murder squad." "Stand down!" "No." Tension filled the hallway like live electricity. Liriana looked between them carefully, then noticed something crucial. Every soldier aimed at Ethan looked uncertain. Not afraid of him, afraid of what they might become by killing him. The realization changed everything. The human was infecting the Empire with conscience, and conscience spread faster than fear once awakened. "Lower your weapons," Liriana ordered. Variks turned sharply. "Princess, this prisoner is destabilizing the Dominion itself." "Good." The single word hit the corridor harder than an explosion. Several officers visibly froze. Variks stared at her in disbelief. "You would sacrifice imperial order for human morality." Liriana stepped beside Ethan calmly. "No," she said quietly. "I would sacrifice imperial cruelty for something better, for the first time in her life." The future empress openly rejected the foundation of the Dominion. Civil war became inevitable after that. News spread rapidly across military networks. Princess Liriana defied supreme command. Human prisoners exposed biological experiments. Royal leadership divided over humanitarian reforms. Entire fleets began choosing sides. Some systems supported Liriana's vision of transformation. Others rallied behind Variks, demanding restoration of traditional Dominion rule. Across occupied territories, rebellions reignited. Not against Liriana, against the old empire itself. And somehow, at the center of galactic chaos, stood Ethan Vale, a human soldier who refused to kill frightened prisoners. The first major battle erupted above Valkyris Prime when Variks launched military cruisers toward the royal palace, intending direct seizure of power. Warning sirens howled across the capital while civilians flooded underground shelters. Inside the palace, war chamber commanders shouted tactical reports over holographic maps. Liriana stood motionless beside the central display. "We can still destroy his fleet," one general urged. "Authorize planetary defense cannons immediately." Ethan studied the tactical projections carefully. "If you fire those cannons," he said quietly, "half the wreckage will fall into civilian districts." "We cannot hesitate. We can adapt," the general scoffed. "Human idealism during war gets people killed." Ethan looked directly at him. "So does arrogance." Liriana made her choice. No planetary cannons. Instead, she ordered evacuation corridors, targeted fleet interceptions, and communication broadcasts offering surrender terms to opposing crews. Riskier, slower, merciful, The battle raged for nearly 9 hours. Fire filled orbital skies, while cruisers shattered above the planet like burning stars. Yet remarkably, civilian casualties remained far below projected estimates because Mercy forced strategy. Humans understood that instinctively, the Dominion never had. During the height of the conflict, Ethan personally led rescue operations through collapsing station sectors, pulling wounded civilians from wreckage while military officers screamed at him to retreat. Liriana watched security footage afterward in silence. The human kept choosing lives over victory, again, again, again. And somehow, the universe itself seemed to bend around that decision. Variks launched one final, desperate assault directly toward the palace command tower. The confrontation ended inside the shattered throne chamber beneath burning skylights. Smoke drifted through ruined marble, while emergency alarms echoed across the palace. Liriana stood facing Variks with energy blade drawn. Ethan nearby, helping injured guards evacuate civilians. "You destroyed the Dominion," Variks snarled. "No," Liriana answered calmly. "You confused fear with strength for too long. You let humans poison you with weakness." Ethan looked up sharply. "Mercy isn't weakness," Variks laughed bitterly. "Then why does every empire abandon it eventually?" Silence lingered for one heavy second. Then Ethan answered softly, "Because cruelty is easier." The sentence struck the chamber harder than weapons fire. Because everyone knew it was true, cruelty simplified decisions. Mercy demanded effort. Empathy required courage. Monsters were easy. Staying human was hard. Variks attacked suddenly. The duel exploded across the ruined throne room in flashes of energy and shattered stone. Liriana fought with terrifying precision while Variks relied on overwhelming aggression. Years of battlefield experience colliding beneath collapsing ceilings, then Variks gained advantage. A brutal strike sent Liriana crashing against broken pillars hard enough to crack armor. He raised his blade for the killing blow. Ethan moved instantly, not attacking, protecting. He shoved Liriana aside just as the weapon struck downward. The blade tore across Ethan's side instead. Blood splashed across the shattered floor. Liriana's expression changed immediately. Not royal anger, not battlefield fury, fear, real fear. Ethan collapsed against the ruined throne, while Variks prepared another strike. Then Mason Reed appeared. The transformed human soldier slammed into Variks with monstrous force, hurling the commander across the chamber while broken implants sparked beneath scarred flesh. For one terrible moment, the entire room expected Mason to kill him after everything done to him. After years of torture, nobody would blame him. Variks himself looked terrified. The transformed soldier pinned the commander against cracked stone, massive claws trembling beside his throat. Then Ethan spoke through pain. "Mason," he whispered. "Don't." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the wounded human bleeding across the throne room floor. Even now, even after all this, he still chose mercy. Mason trembled violently, then slowly lowered his claws. Variks looked genuinely shocked. "You spare me." Ethan forced himself upright slightly. "No," he said weakly, "we spare ourselves." That broke something inside Liriana permanently, because suddenly she understood everything. The human never chose mercy because enemies deserved it. He chose mercy because hatred destroys the person carrying it. The Dominion wanted monsters. Humans fought constantly not to become them. That was the real strength. Not conquest, not fear, choice. The war ended within weeks. Varax's remaining fleets surrendered after public exposure of Dominion atrocities spread across controlled systems. Political structures collapsed rapidly afterward. Occupied worlds demanded independence treaties, execution arenas closed. Biological experimentation programs were dismantled entirely. For many citizens, the transition felt terrifying. The Dominion defined itself through brutality for generations. Without fear, who were they? Princess Liriana faced that question personally every day. Especially while sitting beside Ethan's recovery bed after the throne room battle, the humans survived barely. Doctors warned recovery would take months, maybe longer. Yet even unconscious, he somehow changed the atmosphere around him. Guards spoke softer nearby. Medical staff treated patients more gently. People started looking at each other differently, as if mercy itself became contagious. One evening, after Ethan finally regained consciousness, he found Liriana sitting silently beside the window. "You look terrible," he muttered weakly. She actually laughed softly. "You nearly died occupational hazard." The princess studied him carefully. "You still told Mason not to kill Varix? Yeah? Why?" Ethan looked toward the city beyond the medical tower. "Because if we only become better people when life is easy," he said quietly, "then we were never really better at all." Liriana felt emotion tighten painfully in her throat. "You know," she admitted softly, "when humanity first appeared, I hoped you would become monsters. I know, monsters made sense to me. And mercy didn't." She nodded slowly. Ethan smiled faintly, despite exhaustion. "Most humans don't choose mercy because it feels good. Then why choose it because somebody has to stop the cycle eventually?" The princess looked away briefly. For years she believed strength meant domination. Now she sat beside a wounded soldier who defeated an empire simply by refusing to surrender his humanity. That realization humbled her more than any battlefield ever had. Months later, the former Dominion held its first interstellar civilian assembly inside the rebuilt capital forum of Elcorus Prime. Representatives from conquered systems, liberated colonies, military factions, and independent worlds gathered together beneath banners no longer marked by imperial symbols. The galaxy watched nervously. Most expected chaos, revenge, civil collapse. Instead, Princess Liriana opened the assembly with words nobody expected from a former heir of the Dominion. "We were taught fear creates order," she said before countless worlds. "But fear only creates silence. And silence hides suffering until entire civilizations forget what they are becoming." The chamber remained utterly still. Then she continued. "A human prisoner once told me, cruelty is easy. He was right. Mercy is difficult. Compassion is exhausting. Kindness during war feels impossible sometimes. But difficulty does not make those things weak." Across the assembly, many delegates looked toward Ethan standing quietly among security officers. The human looked deeply uncomfortable with attention, which honestly made several alien diplomats trust him more. Liriana's voice softened slightly. "I wanted monsters because monsters justified everything we had built. But the human chose mercy instead, again and again. Even when hatred would have been easier. And in doing so, he forced us to confront what we had become." Silence spread through the hall, heavy, emotional, real. Then something remarkable happened. People applauded, not forced political applause. Not ceremonial obedience, genuine hope. Sound echoed through the rebuilt capital like the beginning of something entirely new. Years later, historians argued endlessly about how the Dominion truly fell. Some credited political instability, others military overextension. A few insisted Princess Liriana herself transformed the empire through strategic reform. But ordinary people remembered a different story. A human gladiator stood inside an execution arena and refused to kill a frightened prisoner. That single act shattered an empire built on fear. Because compassion terrified cruel civilizations more than armies ever could. The final irony was that Princess Liriana eventually became exactly what the Old Dominion feared most. A ruler who valued mercy above intimidation. And somehow, against every prediction, the galaxy became stronger for it. One quiet night, long after the wars ended, Liriana stood beside Ethan on the upper palace balcony, overlooking Velcurus Prime. The city no longer burned crimson beneath military patrols. Instead, civilian transports crossed peaceful skies while music drifted upward from distant districts. "It still feels strange," she admitted softly. "What does?" "Hope." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah," he said. "Humans are still getting used to it too." She leaned beside him against the railing while cool night winds crossed the palace. "You changed everything." "No," Ethan answered quietly. "People changed themselves. I just reminded them they could." Liriana studied him carefully. "You know what the terrifying part is?" "What?" "I truly believed mercy would make us weak. And now," she looked across the peaceful city below. "Now, I think cruelty was the weakness all along." The stars burn softly above them while distant worlds move through endless darkness. For generations, the Dominion believed monsters created power. Then one stubborn human arrived and proved something far more dangerous. Mercy creates people strong enough not to need monsters at all.